The federal government continues to shrink in size, but it's not all downsizing, it's a lot of reorganizing. And that can impact an agency's ability to function. So the White House has its sights trained on the Department of Justice. They're shifting things around in there that can really impact the entire public sector. But will it impact you? Let's get into it. Last week, the DOJ sends out this memo, which is a response to the February executive order from the president that says shrink the government. And it's a laundry list of changes. And what they're talking about here is merging agencies, cutting offices, and reassigning lawyers. This isn't just change for the sake of changing, but what it says in here is it's about efficiencies of resources and case deconfliction. Of course, this isn't final. They're workshopping these ideas, and they're seeking to make a decision by the end of this week. The DOJ's got over 100,000 employees, cops, lawyers, agents, you name it. This memo and effort is part of a bigger trend. So we're seeing federal agencies across the government now, they're opening up the deferred resignation program once again. They're doing the voluntary early retirement authority, the voluntary separation incentive. That's being put back on the table to encourage people to leave, to further shrink things down. But not everyone's happy about it. You have Jamie Raskin, who's a Democratic congressional representative. This is what he had to say. It is a blueprint for a pay-to-play gangster state. A big point of focus when you're looking at the memo, when you're looking at DOJ's plans, there's a merger between two big agencies. You have the Drug Enforcement Administration and you have the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm Agency. They want to combine those two into one. The memo says it's to achieve efficiencies and stop agents from tripping over each other on cases. The DEA is focusing energy and attention when it comes to drug rings, when it comes to fentanyl. They have a pretty big mission. The ATF, on the other hand, they do more of gun trafficking, bombs, tracing gun crimes. The DEA is the larger of the two agencies. There's about 9,000 people that work for the DEA and ATF, about 5,000. Together, that would be an agency of 14,000. But will everybody be keeping their jobs? If you look across the federal government, the trend right now is workforce cuts. So will they use a merger like this as another excuse to cut workers? You know, conservatives have been looking for ways to defund ATF for a long time. And a lot of people don't realize it, but liberals and Democrats, they favor the ATF. Mainly because conservatives, especially people that cherish the Second Amendment when it comes to their gun rights, they view ATF as government overreach, as trying to create a case for making further restrictions when it comes to owning firearms. So that's why they've been trying to get rid of the ATF. Now, right now, the leader of the ATF is the leader of the FBI, Kash Patel. Kash Patel is the acting leader of the ATF right now. Now, some people are saying the merger of these two agencies, especially if you're talking about a cut in resources, a cut in workforce, this could be reducing the agency's ability to do its mission when it comes to drug traffickers, when it comes to gun crimes, which is a fair point. Fewer agents could mean fewer busts. But on the flip side, if they are duplicating efforts, well, this would make a leaner agency. Right now, the ATF traces guns in about 90% of shooting cases. If that slows down, you got cities like St. Louis and Chicago, well, they're going to be in trouble. Also, the Department of Justice is gutting some big units. First is the Public Integrity section. You might not have heard of that section. They convict corrupted politicians. Just last year, they got a former Virginia sheriff on bribery charges, a former Arkansas judge making false statements, and Atlanta's CFO for federal program theft and tax obstruction. The memo said that most of these lawyers are going to be going to other U.S. attorney offices across the country. So originally there's 30 lawyers in Washington, D.C. They want to make it so there's only 5. They take the other 25 and spread them out. And whether you know this or not, if you take an office with 30 people and you reduce it to 5, you still have that same workload. So either they're going to have to be doing it virtually, someone's going to have to assist with that workload because if it's left undone, you will feel a real impact in DC. Now, DOJ is also changing their tax division. These are the guys that work with the IRS. They forced companies to pay $2.8 billion in penalties in 2023 alone. They're getting pretty much the same deal. There'll be a skeleton crew here, and everyone else will be redistributed throughout the country. And then you have the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act team. That's the law that stops companies in this country from bribing foreign officials. Well, Trump paused any new investigations into that because he's saying it's being abused. If you cut the legal team, if you cut the enforcement team, then you could see an environment where bribes increase, corruption increases. That's why we have the congressman here calling it a gangster state. Now, he might be exaggerating a bit, but the concern behind his words is real. Then there's the Community Relations Service. That's pretty much going to be gone. That's a tiny office, about 40 people there. They usually mediate community conflicts. They deal with riots and hate crimes. The memo says eliminate it. Plus, they're merging all grant offices, domestic violence, tribal safety, and local police into one. The Department of Justice is an older federal agency. It's like 150 years old. It was created by Ulysses Grant, the guy who was credited for winning the Civil War, the top general on the Union side. He became president for 2 terms, and he's the one who set it up. Now, what people are concerned about, what people are worried about with this agency losing some of its power or being reduced is what we could see is increased government corruption, delayed justice for victims, national security risks, and weaker fights against crime. There is some merit to that concern because if you look back just 5 years ago in 2020, during the pandemic, there was a cyber crime spike, ransomware, cyber attacks to schools, to government agencies, to libraries, to a lot of public buildings. The DOJ was not able to react because their workforce wasn't prepared to deal with a spike that occurred during that time. So a lot of people that were behind the ransomware, they were never convicted. They were never caught. They would never got into any trouble because the Department of Justice wasn't prepared and they were not fully staffed to deal with it. But compared to other federal agencies, Department of Justice, they look like they're in pretty good shape if you were to compare them to the Education Department, which is a shell of its former self, or the General Service Administration, GSA, which wants to cut by 50%, or USAID or something like that. Cuts have not hit the Department of Justice like it has hit other areas, other agencies. And interestingly enough, right now we're seeing the deferred resignation program being opened up to a lot more federal workers. That's basically a program where if you accept it, you get paid for 6 months. You get all your benefits, but you're placed on paid administrative leave, so you don't have to show up to the office. You're not expected to do any work until September 30th. If you want to know more about that, watch this video next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.